Good morning, everyone. This is Joe coming to you from Nankin Hobby, and today we are up a little bit early. It is about 7 a.m. We wanted to get started a little bit early, get this video out there, or filmed anyway, so we can get it out into the ether as soon as we're allowed to. So you can see I got the sunglasses going on. I got this Yeti cup filled with iced coffee, partly because it is a little bit too early for me to be existing in the world, but mostly because this is cool Losi stuff that we have that I got when I went to Horizon last week to check out a new product release that is being announced today. And that is what we're here to talk about today, the new Losi Promoto-MX. Now, I didn't know what I was going to see at first. They brought a few dealers out to talk about a brand new top secret project that they've been working on for years that's about to be announced. And then they showed us what it was. So I knew it wasn't going to be like a rebranded or like a new body on a Baja Ray or a Rock Ray or something. They're not going to bring out dealers and go through all that effort for something like that. It's definitely going to be something, brand new, different, but I really had no idea like what it could have been. Then they showed us this, and a motorcycle is the last thing that I would have expected. Because we've seen RC motorcycles before, and they're never good. Like Venom or Atomic did one pretty recently. Kyosho did, or maybe even still does one. There have been a number of companies who've done RC motorcycles throughout the years, and I don't know, they can be fun in some kind of a gimmicky way, but they're not good. They're not anything you would expect of something like hobby grade RC quality. So much so that when people usually ask about RC motorcycles, the answer, even if not technically true, is basically there isn't anything, or there isn't anything good anyway. I was amazed. This is honestly way better than anything you could possibly imagine from an RC motorcycle. If you've driven anything in the RC motorcycle category before, forget everything you know. Those didn't exist. This is it. Finally, we have an RC motorcycle that you're going to have fun with. So first, I feel like it's important to bring up all of the negative things that are kind of true of RC motorcycles traditionally, because the Pro Moto X is impressive entirely because it isn't bad in these ways. So if you've seen or had any hands-on experience with other RC motorcycles, you'll know that like the primary thing that makes them kind of bad is that they're just not stable. They flip over all the time, they'll fall to the side, they don't turn well, they're constantly riding on their lean bars, and if they fall too much, then you're either going to pick it up or you're at best whipping it around in a bunch of wide circles trying to get it upright again at speed, and it's just not the best experience. And some of this has kind of been forgivable a little bit because an RC motorcycle kind of intuitively feels like something that's hard to make stable, and there hasn't really been anything better. So even if it's not a particularly good experience or something you might expect from something hobby grade, if there's nothing better, I think you maybe offer it a little bit of slack. And that's allowed me to have a little bit of fun sometimes with RC motorcycles in the past, even if they're not good. Now, though, the Pro Moto X, it doesn't have any of these issues. It's ridiculously stable, probably more stable than cars, or like it's truly unreal. The other RC motorcycles just don't exist in my mind anymore. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's the case. The Pro Moto-MX is built entirely around correcting these stability issues, from the mechanicals design to the electronics package. The guys at Spectrum developed this thing called MX6S, mouthful a little bit, but it's super cool. It's a stabilization system kind of like the AS3X that they have in their planes, but it's created specifically for motorcycles. So it's got stabilizing in two different ways on all three axes, and it just works. Additionally, it has a gyroscope with over a pound of weight spinning, and that keeps things super stable. In fact, just holding this thing in your hand, you try to tip it to the side, and you just can't keep it there. It naturally wants to, like with your hands, you're not going to be able to keep this. It's constantly doing one of these and just wants to keep itself upright. In fact, you can set this gyroscope unit on a table on its side, and it's naturally going to pick itself up. It just holds itself there. It's really impressive. It's kind of wild. And other motorcycles have had a similar kind of mechanical gyroscope like that, but it's usually positioned and a lot of weight positioned over like the rear wheel, and that puts all of your weight in the back. The Promoto-MX has this dead center, so it keeps all of your weight dead center, and that's really makes this drive really realistically. So the MS6X is also stabilizing on your pitch. So as you pop a wheelie, it can either correct for that, or it can continue to ride that without any real effort on your part. So it has 3 running modes, basically. One's kind of a normal, one is a wheelie suppression mode. So if the front pops up, it's going to naturally want to kick back down. So you might see it doing a little bit of this, but you're not having to do anything to correct for that. It's just going to want to keep as flat as possible. And there's a wheelie hold mode where it'll kind of do the opposite. You can basically just full throttle it, and it's going to hold a wheelie for basically as long as you want. I don't have any, a ton of experience driving an RC motorcycle. The things that have existed in the past, I've played around with them a little bit. Certainly not the kind of skill level to, ride a wheelie. In fact, I'm not even very good at driving cars, but I could really just full throttle it. Like a beginner could pick this up and immediately just ride a wheelie for as long as they want. And that's kind of part of the appeal to something like this, I think. I think this is especially going to draw a lot of people from like the motocross scene into the hobby, and I think this is going to be really cool for beginners. Or if you are used to driving, buggies or trucks or whatever, this is going to be a little bit different of an experience. It doesn't quite feel like a car. The way it turns is a little bit different. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's so stable and beginner friendly that you're not going to have any problem picking this up and immediately having fun with it. So beyond the stability features that make this super beginner friendly, it's also really robust. The Promoto-MX was definitely built for durability. Losi designed this to make this look as realistic as possible, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But because they wanted to make everything realistic, you have some durability concerns, and they had to really engineer, certain fixes. So like this front fork that looks really cool, you might expect that to break or bend and be a problem. But they've developed this crash structure that keeps everything super rigid up front while you're running until it sees an impact, and then there's a little bit of give there. Things compress and it absorbs that impact. And then they've done something similar in the rear to where like the rear fender hinges upward and there's a bumper underneath it. So if you're driving along and you wheelie or flip over, you hit a rock or something, it flips over. You're on a jump, it does want to, sometimes flip during a jump. You're just scraping this bumper underneath the fender instead of tearing up that fender, and that's super cool. And this thing does, flip. If you're doing a jump, especially until you kind of get the hang of it, because it doesn't jump the way you might expect a car to, it's gonna do some tumbles. And the really impressive thing about this to me was that if it does tumble over, you kind of just keep it on the throttle, and it's gonna right itself like 90% of the time. Truly unreal. And everything kind of works too. We had like 10 people out there running. Not all of them were, good drivers. Some of them were people like me that it was subjected to. We ran on pavement. We went to an 8-scale buggy track, just some dirt jumps. It crashed into like some tires. It crashed into a few different things. Lots of jumping and tumbling, and nothing really broke. I think at one point something in the front end needed to be adjusted, but it was just a little bit of wrenching. Nothing actually needed to be replaced. It was really unreal how durable it was too. And it's a pretty heavy vehicle too, so there's a lot going into a crash. And yeah, it really held up. So stopping is also something that Losi put a ton of thought and effort into getting right on this, where other RC motorcycles have kind of done poorly before. The Losi guys were really candid about their R&D, and they said that initially this thing had a pretty unreasonable stopping distance, but they weren't too keen on just settling, and they kind of wanted this to work exactly how they wanted it to. So in addition to the electronic braking that you might see on an RC car or truck or something, this also has a mechanical brake up front, and that cuts the stopping distance down dramatically. It's worth noting, though, that this is still going to have a pretty considerably longer stopping distance than your average RC car. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And honestly, overall, this drives very different from an RC car. You're going to adjust, but it's going to feel different in a number of ways. Turning feels a lot different because you're not turning a servo that's controlling your steering. There is a servo, but you don't have direct control of that. So when you're steering, it's all done through this MS6X. It's controlling the lean of the bike overall. And what that exactly does to the servo is going to depend on how fast you're going and what angle you're at. And it's really just controlling the lean. So turning feels a lot different. The way you take jumps, the throttle, where you need to be on the throttle during a jump feels a ton different. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but you're going to pick up very quickly on this. Other performance things had to be engineered to make this thing both look and work like a real motorcycle. So a lot of work went into the front fork tubes to make them look realistic and still be comparable to RC shocks. So you have a spring that sits above your piston and pushes that down and through. The rear suspension is super stiff, just like a real bike, but it's a rising rate, so it gets soft at ride height and then it gets progressively stiffer as it works through its travel. The chain drive is super realistic, and they also have tensioners so that you can change things up as things wear in. They didn't just make this look like a real bike, but they made it work like a real bike also, and that's super cool. And the scale detail overall is just crazy cool, and I think this is going to be something that's really going to be a draw for this. From all of the functioning components to the cosmetic details on the bike and the driver has the super nice cloth jersey that actually zips open realistically. All of the graphics on it are right in the fabric, and it's really seamless. Everything's customizable. Not only is this going to come with like the stock number plates for the bike that you get, but it's also going to come with blank number plates and number decals. You can get a blank jersey for the rider that you can put your own stuff onto. And honestly, the rider is super durable too. That was a concern that I had, just because I've seen these things get decapitated on bikes in the past, partly because they're always flipping over and dragging on the ground and stuff, and this doesn't do that as much. But this was also just really durable. You can take him and kind of bend him and stuff, and he holds up really well. And you also don't have to, you just don't have to worry about him getting destroyed. It was really durable. I kind of expected that it would be ruined after a run, but if anything, it just looked cooler after it got a little bit dirty and weathered. I think this is going to be a really big draw for this too, that people who are into the motocross scene can make this look like their own bike, their own driver. Yeah, this is, I see this in some ways being like crawlers, in that you can make this, look how you want it to. And there's also a ton of aftermarket parts that are going to be available for this. So different wraps, aluminum parts in different colors. You can really customize this thing at launch even. So this is running on Spectrum Electronics, and it's going to handle up to a 2-cell LiPo, and that's going to push it a little over 40 miles an hour with the right gearing. I kind of anticipated that all of our customers are going to ask, how fast can this go? Can we put 3S to it? And I asked about that a little bit. It's not going to handle more than 2S with the stock electronics. You could potentially swap the system out and run more on that. However, it's also going to be drawing power to the ESC for the gyro, and that's going to be a hard cap at 2S. There are maybe ways you could get around that, but I think really this probably is the top speed on that. And driving it doesn't seem like it should be going faster, to be honest. I think as soon as you get your hands on it, you'll get a feel for it and kind of see. But I kind of anticipate that there are going to be guys wanting to do that, just like there are with everything. Everyone wants things to go fast, but this is a quarter scale, pretty heavy vehicle. The stopping is not like a car. I feel like 40 miles an hour is plenty fast for this thing. It was actually very impressive in that way. But Spectrum Electronics throughout this motor ESC radio system. Radio has a 3-position switch for your different driving modes. Again, this handles 2S. The battery compartment was designed for a normal size 2S. The bike is very thin, so you don't have much room that way, but it could be, you could put a shorty in there, or it could fit a full-size 2S. You don't have to worry about having to get a shorty pack, which is kind of cool. If that's also going to be a little bit of a limit to anything you might want to modify. They did try to make this look very narrow and realistic, so putting other electronics packages in there probably isn't a thing at the moment. I don't see that happening, but again, I don't think you're going to want to. Overall, the Promoto-MX is one of the coolest things I've seen hit the RC market, well, ever. It's the culmination of years of trying to make not just another RC motorcycle, but the RC motorcycle. Something that actually feels like something you would buy at a hobby shop. And they delivered it in a way that's so impressive, I can't even put it into words. You can't really understand until you properly see it. So as soon as these come in, I think next week, we're going to head out and get some video with one. Stay tuned for that. Right now, though, you can head over to nankinhobby.com and pre-order the new Losi Promoto-MX. It's offered as a ready-to-run at $549.99 without the battery and charger, or $599.99 with. We're super excited to see these on our shelves, and we can't wait to see how this shakes up the market. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and we will catch you on the next one.